Now, let's move on to the wide receiver position. Jason, why don't you give us the wide receiver studs for this week?
Wide receiver studs. Harrison, Steve Smith, Chad Johnson, Torrey Holt, Reggie Wayne, T.O., Javon Walker, Randy Moss, Andre Johnson, Roy Williams. Okay, if any of those guys, start them.
As you can see, we added some guys to the list this week, Moss and Andre Johnson in particular. These guys, they produced, they were kind of on the fringe when we made the list last week. They produced last week. They're on the list. They're studs. You got to play them. All right?
They sure are. Now, Jeff, who's our sleeper pick at wide receiver?
The sleeper pick for wide receiver this week is Chris Chambers for the Miami Dolphins. They play against the... Who do they play against?
Cowboys.
Dallas Cowboys, excuse me, at home. Dallas Cowboys, they couldn't stop Eli Manning and the Giants. Plexico Burress, they're right here. 3 touchdowns, over 150 yards. Chris Chambers is the #1 guy there, and I think he's going to produce not those type of numbers, but he's good for a touchdown, probably close to 100 yards. So Chris Chambers is a nice sleeper this week.
That's our pick.
All right, now
let's go to the
email questions.
Email questions once
Jason,
again.
give me a question here.
This question's from Jason Johnson in Miami, Florida. Wide receiver, would you pick? Appropriately enough, Chris Chambers versus Dallas, Ronald Curry versus Denver.
I think you know who I'm going to pick. Chris Chambers. He is a guy. Now, Ronald Curry had a great week last week, and I think he's going to be a pretty good player this year overall. He's a real sleeper. However, when you're playing against the Denver Broncos secondary, and you're the #1 guy, who do you get? Champ Bailey. You don't play anyone against Champ Bailey unless he's on the stud list. So, Curry's off this week. I like Chris Chambers a lot, so go with Chambers. Jason, we have a question here. Sandra Cahill from Newport, Rhode Island writes, guys, as my #2 wide receiver, because I already have Marvin Harrison, should I start Randy Moss or Plexico Burress?
Wow. Well, as I said in the opening, Randy Moss, to me, looks like a dominant player again. So, to me, this is a no-brainer. I would start Randy Moss. Granted, Plexico had a fantastic week last week. I see you have the old school jersey on.
I do.
You don't have the team number jersey.
I do.
But
big fan.
But who knows if Eli Manning is going to be playing? If he is playing, who knows how he's going to be able to deliver the ball deep to Plexico like he did last week? I would go with Randy Moss.
Eli being a question mark, you got to go with Moss. I agree with that one.
Okay, so let's move on to our tight end picks. Jeff, want to take us through our tight end studs?
Gladly. Stud list here: Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez, Todd Heap, Kellen Winslow, Vernon Davis, Ben Watson, and Jason Witten we added to the list this week. We took off Algie Crumpler and we took off Chris Cooley. We don't think these guys are worthy of studs at this point in tight end, so we took those off the list immediately. I mean, I think that's pretty straightforward. I think, especially Crumpler with that offense down there, it's ridiculous. They're so bad. You can't count on them.
If you have him, you're in a tough spot. You are. I hope you have a good backup because who knows if he can produce from week to week.
Yep.
It's a big question mark. Joey Harrington getting the ball. That's what happened last week, and it wasn't pretty.
Didn't happen.
It wasn't pretty.
He couldn't get anyone the ball. Maybe he got the Minnesota Vikings the ball twice for touchdowns. All right.
That's about it.
All right, now sleeper this week.
Jeff, who is our sleeper? Who is our tight end?
Our sleeper is Desmond Clark for Chicago Bears. They play at home against the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City's defense, terrible. I think there's going to be a lot of red zone opportunities for the Chicago Bears. I think Desmond Clark could sneak a touchdown in there.
This really is. It's solely a matchup play that we have this week. Desmond Clark, but they've been going to tight end recently. He is the starter. He's the #1 guy in Chicago with Olsen being out, and because of that, we like this pick.
Yeah, we've learned over the years that matchup plays are very important. That's how you win leagues. You got to look at the matchups. Don't just throw guys in based on their names.
Yeah, the draft is vital, but the week to week decision making is really what puts you over the top.
Mm-hmm. Now, we have some email questions regarding tight ends. Jason, why don't you throw one my way?
Sure. This is from Stephen Curry in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Heath Miller versus Buffalo, or Randy Michael versus San Francisco?
You know what? I'm going to go with Heath Miller. I think Heath Miller is one of the main targets for Ben Roethlisberger. They're throwing the ball this year. They showed it last week against Cleveland, although Cleveland basically handed them a lot of opportunities. But Heath Miller is a big tight end. He's a big target. He runs well. He finds the end zone. And I think he's going to be good for another touchdown this week against Buffalo's defense. Buffalo's defense, they couldn't stop Denver. And I think that Heath Miller is a better player than Randy McMichael at this point. Jason, let me throw a question your way. This question is from James Wilson, San Diego, California. He writes, guys, should I start Algie Crumpler, they play Jacksonville, or Dallas Clark, they play at Tennessee?
Stay away from Algie Crumpler. Stay away from the Atlanta offense. I mean, how many times do we have to say it? Do not play anybody in the Atlanta offense. They stink. They're not going to produce.
Drop if anyone sends any more questions regarding the Atlanta offense, we're immediately trashing them. Okay, they're in our trash bin right away.
We're not even going to read them.
No,
so Dallas Clark is the obvious pick here. Crumpler, last year I would have said Crumpler in a landslide, but this year Dallas Clark in a landslide. Amazing how things change so quickly from one year to the next.
Here's my answer. Algie who? That's my answer to you, James. All right, so you know Jason's answer there. So we've recapped all 4 positions. Now what we're going to start doing at the end of each week is giving you some waiver wire pickups. We're going to each give you 2 this week that we think are good guys to have, not only now but maybe later on in the year. So Jason,
you have to be on top of the waiver wire. You have to be quick on the trigger to make these pickups, because this is what really differentiates the top fantasy guys from the guys who draft well and just sit there and do nothing. Unless you have LT on your team, you need to be on the waiver wire. You really do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Jeff, you want to take us through we're each picking giving our 2 top waiver wire pickups transactions recommended for this week.
First guy right off the bat, Derek Ward, backup running back for the New York Giants. Now that Brandon Jacobs is definitely out 3 to 5 weeks, Ward looked really good last week. I think he almost looked better than Brandon Jacobs. And this guy could produce, as he's going to be the starting running back for the New York Giants for the next 3 to 5 weeks. Who knows if Brandon Jacobs is going to come back and take his job? You don't know that. He's proven nothing in the NFL. And if you have a chance to go after Ward, which you do, everyone does, bid a lot of money. Put a lot of your free agent dollars out there. Not all of it, but you might want to think about spending 50% of your money on
Yeah, because this guy is a starter. It's tough to pick up a starting running back
on a good team
who's being utilized like the way he was last week.
Yeah, it's a good offensive team, good offensive line. They're going to run the ball, go after him. And my number 2 guy, Michael Pittman in Tampa Bay. Someone might have him in your league. If no one does, get this guy on your lineup. Cadillac Williams is he's a walking injury. He gets injured every year. He got injured last year. He's going to get injured this year. He already is. He has bruised ribs after week 1. How long do you think this guy's going to last? Michael Pittman, he's a good player. He's shown in the past that he can actually start and produce fantasy points. So go after Michael Pittman. You could probably get him at a value too. You don't have to spend a lot of money on Michael Pittman. Jason, a couple guys.
Sure, my 2 waiver wire pickups are recommended are Nate Burleson for Seattle. DJ Hackett's out for a while. I'm not saying that Burleson's a guy you're going to pick up and plug into your starting lineup like Ward, but he is a guy who could move up the depth chart in your fantasy team and eventually be a starter. And the other waiver wire transaction I recommend is picking up the Cincinnati defense. They play Cleveland this week. The chances are that the Cincinnati defense is probably available in your league. And I'm not saying that they're going to be a top defense, but as a situational matchup play, this is about as good as it gets.
Yep.
They shut down Baltimore last week, and they were swarming. They're coming off they're on a high after last week's game, and Cleveland is about as low as you can get. So it's a heck of a matchup for that defense.
And Jason, I didn't know that's who you're going to pick. That's a perfect example of when we mentioned on our preview of defenses is to look at matchups, like a week-by-week matchup. You're not going to use the Cincinnati defense on a regular basis. However, when they play Cleveland's and the Atlantas of the world, you use them. You put them in. That's plain and simple.
Yeah, it's purely a matchup play.
Yeah. Unless you have the Chicago or Baltimore defense.
Right, exactly. Okay, well, we wish you best of luck in week 2. We hope that our selections help you in making your picks for this week. And we'll see you for week 3. But good luck to everyone. Be sure to watch us on YouTube or check out our website, FantasyWiseGuys.com. Send your email questions to FantasyWiseGuys at hotmail.com by Wednesday of week 3, and we'll address them on the show. And Jeff, you want to plug your link site
Again,
as well?
if you need some good fantasy football information, www.allfantasyfootballlinks.com. Check it out. Bye-bye.